Hey everybody, I am here with one of my favorite storytellers, Dancia. We met in a storytelling class at Magnet Theater. By now, our audience has heard quite a lot about storytelling at Magnet.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
That's why you should hear more about it.
Exactly. We took a class together that was 6 weeks long.
Yes.
Right? That's it. And I feel like I know you so well now.
I know. It was very intense in like a really good way.
Yeah, like very emotionally connecting people almost right, like within 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. And I think sort of supportive, creative, exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like just a different like a way to interact with people than the normal way you meet people in New York, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like we got to know things about each other that maybe good friends of ours don't even know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right? So that's kind of the beauty of storytelling. You're kind of putting it all out there.
Exactly. So we're going to do that for you today. Put some stuff out there.
Woohoo!
All right. Dancia has volunteered to go first today. So, hold on. This thing's starting to curl up nowadays. All right, Dancia, pick a word, please.
Elaborate.
Elaborate. E-L-A-B-O-R-A-T-E. Okay, a second word, please.
Run.
R-U-N. All right, now pick a triangle. This one. Okay.
The
lightning bolt in the heart. All right, a story about friendship. It could be fiction, nonfiction, personal.
Okay.
Anything with the words elaborate and run.
Run. I know. Why did I pick elaborate?
It's going to be great. I'm excited.
Okay.
All right, Dancia's going to take a minute to think about it, and we'll be right back.
So, when I got to college in Western Massachusetts, it was actually my first time coming back to the States since primary school. And I felt very out of place. I didn't really know Massachusetts at all. And I immediately sort of latched on to someone who felt a little bit like me. She had some ties to the U.S., but she was new to the U.S. as well. She hadn't grown up here. And so Lisa was sort of my go-to. I think she just, as much as I felt we had something in common, she just epitomized everything that I was not. She was tall and bold and beautiful, and she had these elaborate, gorgeous braids. She seemed exceedingly confident. She had this great kind of powerful laugh. And she had the most exquisite voice you would hear. We lived in the same house, and as you walked around, you could just hear her voice like wafting through the halls. So I felt a lot of kinship with her, but I was also incredibly intimidated by her. Yet she somehow deigned to kind of hang out with me, and we became fast friends. I think, partially because we were both kind of new to the States, and we were both also mixed. So I think that was mixed race. I think that was something that kind of bound us together. And we had kind of obnoxious pet names for each other. But so we kind of, I felt like a lot of my interests sort of evolved from her interests too. I'm not a tremendous singer, but I somehow managed to do choir. I personally have always been really interested in politics, but she really went and made something out of it. She studied government. And she would then go on to kind of work in nonprofit and in sort of development and the UN and stuff like that. I felt like she had a real vision for the world and the way she wanted to see it, and I was more like kind of a mercenary. I had the same interests, but I was always really worried about paying rent. But when we graduated, we stayed in touch, and I was, initially, I was in Hong Kong, and she was one of my first friends to have kids. And she had this beautiful boy named Nadi, and I remember going to visit her in Europe, and he was just this cherub, and he was fun and energetic, and I remember him getting stuck in like the dishwasher, and not really, like not dangerously, like in a very cute way, and we quickly took him out. And he just had this like kind of charming, devilish smile that it was just, he was irresistible. You knew that he was going to get his way with pretty much everything. Later on, I moved to New York, and that turned out to be a great place because later she and Nadi were in Haiti, and they would make their way through New York on their way back to Europe to see family and friends. And so I was kind of at this essential nexus, this perfect stop where they would kind of stop off and stay for a few days, and I really got to know them. And aside from knowing her, you know, I hadn't really spent a ton of time with him. And I remember one time he must have been about 8. She was still asleep, and he kind of ventured out of the room, like very trepidatiously, almost like an animal, like worried he was going to get eaten or something by going to the watering hole. But this child was hungry, and he was looking for food, and as timidly as I could, the way you might sort of coax a wild animal, I tried to sort of let him know that it was okay. And I told him, you know, what would you like to eat something? And we were able to rustle up some toast and something, and we sat just the two of us and had this great conversation, and, you know, about nothing much in particular what he was into. And I think those were sort of the beginning of our own relationship and friendship separate from me and his mother, Lisa. So we had this great run over many years of going back and forth, spending this time together. Every time they would come to New York, and we'd go to exhibits and movies and do fun stuff. And, you know, he was also very political, so we'd watch lots of Daily Show and Jon Stewart, and it was just fun, wonderful time together. And I think, you know, I relied on it. I came to expect those trips, and I kind of took them for granted because, you know, it never occurred to me to go visit them. They were always going to be in New York, and I always made the most of their visits. Until I didn't. And, you know, it's 10 years ago yesterday, unfortunately, that we had the earthquake in Haiti, and we lost Lisa. Nadi thankfully made it. And, you know, I've done my best in these 10 years not to take him for granted or to take the opportunities with him for granted. So he's not my son. I think of him sort of like family, like an adopted godson, and I'm really thankful for the time that he and I have been able to spend together, and for the glimpses I get to see of Lisa through him too.
Ancia, thank you for sharing that story with us.
Sure.
That's really hard. And how often do you see her son now?
I see him at least once a year, so he's in college now, and which is crazy to me. It feels like, you know, no time has gone by since then, but he was 11 and he's about to turn 21, so it's been a while.
Wow.
And yeah, the passage of time through him. So yeah, I'm very lucky. I get to see him like at least once a year. Again, being in New York, it's sort of a central hotspot, so he likes to come to New York. I think I'm sort of like I'm part of the package, but I'm very grateful. I'll take time with him however I can get it. So yeah, and yeah, so it's I think especially with everything going on in Puerto Rico and stuff, everything feels, and then obviously the anniversary, it just feels very topical. I think about her all the time anyway, but right now she just is like, I feel like everywhere right now. Yeah.
Well, thank you for telling us about her.
Yeah. She did a lot of amazing work, so. And she was just an amazing person. So.
We have to keep these people close to us.
Yeah.
Even if we can't physically in our memory.
I think, you know, I do feel like sometimes, I forget what the adage is, but it's like some people burn so brightly, you know, that it's like I feel like they use up all their time because everything that they do and the impact they have is so strong. And so there's so much of them to remember, you know?
This is a weird transition, but I was watching this documentary on Patrick Swayze a few weeks ago, and a lot of people said that he was so physical that he spent his whole life doing so much with his body that at a certain point, like, there was no more energy for it to use.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very hard to lose such dear people, but it's great that you cherish her, like, through her memory and through her son.
Yeah.
And that we get to learn a little bit about her, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
All right, now you're going to help me tell a story.
Excellent.
It's gotten a little... With
It's so
age,
pretty, though.
Thank you. With age, it's having a harder time standing up.
Feels like it's a metaphor for all of us.
I know.
Okay.
All right, my first word is watch. And second word is fear.
Ooh.
Okay, I am going to take something different than yours. I'll go with this one.
Okay. Fairy tale.
Fairy
fiction.
tale. The audience probably knows by now that I love a fairy tale. I do not ever really remember what's in which thing, but it doesn't.
That's good.
But it seems like something
Subconsciously.
underneath does, yeah. All right, I'm going to take a minute to think about it, watch, fear, fairy tale, and we will reconvene. Once upon a time, there was a watchtower, and in the watchtower sat a guard. His name was Timothy. Timothy sat in the watchtower with a very tall hat and a very little child. The little child's name was Yonah, and Yonah was his daughter. And they stayed up at the top of that watchtower their whole lives. Below them was the rest of the castle, where there were people who talked and danced and laughed, and Timothy and Yonah could hear them. And Yonah always said, "What's going on down there? It sounds like so much fun." And he said, "Don't worry, we're staying up here." And then Timothy would stand on guard in the watchtower, and he'd look down at this vast green land, and in the distance was a forest, and on the other side of the forest was a lake. And when Yonah was tall enough, she stood next to him and looked down too, and she said, "What's all that down there? It's amazing." And he said, "Don't worry about that. We're supposed to stay up here." But Yonah was getting older, and she was getting more curious, and the laughter was getting louder, and the fields were getting greener, and she just had to know what else was going on out there. And Timothy said, "Please do not go. Don't you understand? It is our job to keep watch. The only time we're ever supposed to interact with anyone else is when we see danger coming to us. That means these are the circumstances where we can reach out to someone else. If we see an army coming with their horses and their swords and their pitchforks and their torches, we can reach out to someone if we see a dragon coming. We can reach out to someone if we see a witch. Those are pretty much the only circumstances. Oh, if there are cannons coming, and like any time we think that we're in mortal danger and that the people below us are, that's the only time when we're even allowed to talk to anyone else. The rest of the time, it's us up here. I know you're wondering if they're not interacting with anyone down there and they're never leaving, how are they getting food? Like, how are they living up here? There was a dumbwaiter. I love a dumbwaiter. There was a dumbwaiter, and the people downstairs would send up food, and when they were finished eating, they would send the empty dishes down, because it was their job to stand guard all the time. And eventually, Timothy taught Yonah, okay, this is how you look out of the telescope, and this is how you operate the emergency protocols. And he taught her everything about guarding the watchtower. But she just needed to understand what the laughter was about. And then one night there was music, and she just had to know. Like, not only was it people singing, but there were instruments, and she could hear them all. And there was all these smells of amazing food coming up to them. And in the dumbwaiter, there was like a little tray of some of the scraps from what must have been an enormous feast, because you could just smell everything. You could smell like all the roasted vegetables and the peach pie and everything great. And Yonah had grown up at this point, but not that, she was still kind of short. And Timothy just wouldn't let her go. And she said to herself that night of that party, she said, I don't know what he's so afraid of, and I don't know what's down there, but I have to know. And so after they put their dirty dishes down, and after they hoisted up the dumbwaiter to get their dessert, and while Timothy was out looking at the fields to see if anyone was coming in to attack the party, Yonah sat herself into the dumbwaiter. She had to fold herself up into like a tiny little ball. And she got into the dumbwaiter, and she put all her weight on that rope and all her weight on the bottom so she could go down. And as the door of the dumbwaiter opened, she looked out, and she saw all these candles and all these dancers and all this food and fun and life. And she walked out of that dumbwaiter and she partied. We told some stories.
We told some stories. So, wow, so Timothy was so scared.
He was so scared. I didn't get to figure out what exactly he was scared of, but that's what happens when you tell a story on the fly.
But I think it's so interesting, though, right? Because on some levels, like, people in real life sometimes, like, you don't even know what you're scared of half the time because you don't go check it out. Like, it's such a good, like, metaphor for real life. Like, and, you know, it's just like, forget this.
Well, that's been most of my life, personally. But I also think sometimes when you're so focused on the disaster, like what disaster you're afraid of, you don't have room to think about what the wonderful things could be.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
And, you know, who knows in that story if she ends up going back up or if she just leaves. I mean, I don't think...
I was kind of rooting for her to go, but...
I, like, want her to go, but I want her to I kind of want her to, like...
To bring him.
To be outside. Like, she knows what he'll be looking at through the telescope, and she'll be like, hey, I miss you, I'm going to come back, you know?
That's true.
See each other again.
Right, not just, like, take off. Right, that would be kind of sad.
That would be sad.
Yes.
But I also feel like she's got to go.
Right, so it's a little bit of a conundrum. Well,
yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, so that's a whole other, like, part 2 or 3.
Part 2. You know,
how does she get him out?
So many of the stories we tell in the show, I feel like, could have sequels or like, it takes about 4 minutes to know what the story is about. So like, we only know where the story is going at minute 4. So then it kind of needs another session to finish it off.
I feel like there's another idea in here for, like, another type of show where it's like it's all fiction and then you bounce, like, first half and second half off of 2 people.
Oh,
so one starts and then the other person finishes it.
I love this. That might be season 2.
Maybe that's season 2.
That might be season 2.
Voila.
Or, like, I'm also also thinking about what our season finale is going to be. You know, there's a lot.
That's
There's
fun.
a lot of options.
Yeah, maybe the season finale could be like revisiting, you know, like the stories like you've been dying to know the answer to.
You know, my dream for the season finale has been to get everyone who's been on the show like all together at like to tell a story together, but scheduling is kind of the hardest thing.
I know.
So I don't know if it's
but
possible.
everybody maybe we could, you know, this is the age of digital and whatever. We could maybe do remote
there might be a
stuff.
way to like finish each or like tell the next chapter of each other's stories or something.
I recently saw over the holidays a choir. It was like a virtual choir. It was like 2,000 people, and half of them were like represented by like just displays. They were in different places. So, you know, I mean, that might be a little elaborate. We're back to that word, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like maybe there are like easy things. Everybody's got a phone.
All right, we're gonna crack this. We'll see which of because a lot of the stories have been personal stories, but I'll look back through the records and see which fiction ones could use, you know, another chapter.
Our connections. Maybe we comment on each other's stories. Who knows?
Yeah, that'd be great. I love this.
Lots of ideas.
There's lots of ideas, lots of stories.
Yeah.
We have lots of things to talk about.
So much to do.
All right, well, thank you for joining us on the show today, and check back soon for some more stories.
Bye.
Bye.